So China starts from a pretty weak position. I think we've got to start with that. Almost all of their manufacturing equipment is imported from the U.S., Japan, Netherlands. Most of the advanced chips they're using are imported from Taiwan, South Korea, U.S. There's a design industry in China that's growing in sophistication, and I think is likely to keep growing in sophistication, but is still behind by most metrics. And China spends more money importing semiconductors every year than it does oil, which is sort of an insane fact. That's true. For the last decade, they spent more money on chips than oil, and they import a lot of oil. They import more chips. So that's a weak starting point. Advantages are, A, we have 3 case studies of governments in East Asia in the past century succeeding in catching up to the cutting edge or getting close to it in semiconductors. So just at face, the story that China can do the same, we have to take that at least as a plausible story. B, the amount of money they're pouring in, although it's hard to get an exact figure because it's quite opaque, is enormous. Vastly larger than what the U.S. is spending via the CHIPS Act. And then the third thing is that China's already so integrated into electronic supply chains. They're in the low end, they're on the assembly side, but that gives them a lot of leverage. In your iPhone, for example, that is an iPhone that's assembled in China, which means that for all of the chip companies that are putting chips in your iPhone, of which there are a dozen, depending on which model you have, for them, China's one of their biggest customers. And so they've got to be responsive to China's government's demands. And so I thought it was really interesting, for example, in the past month, Apple has said that it is considering using Chinese NAND memory chips for smartphones to be sold in China and non-Chinese chips to be sold abroad. Well, that's a really interesting use of China's market power to force Apple to buy a lot more Chinese chips. Now, that might change with today's rules. We have to look at the details because I think they might actually hit that Chinese firm in question. But I think we should expect to see more of China throwing its weight around. And they've got a better position than anyone to do that because most assembly happens in China.
Right.